Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Tammy Diedrich, the Managing Editor of IBM Systems Magazine, and I'm the moderator for this event. Today's webinar is sponsored by Phoenix Software and is titled JES Systems Management Software, More with Less for Less. Our featured speaker today is Ed Jaffe. Ed joined Phoenix Software International in 1987. He became the manager of research and development in the mid-1990s and was named the Chief Technology Officer in 2009. Ed co-manages the MVS program at Share, is an active participant in mainframe-related social media and System-Z Partner World for developers, and is recognized throughout the mainframe community as a subject matter expert and strong advocate for the System-Z platform with an emphasis on ZOS. Today, Ed will explain the functions, features, and focus areas for the current release of JES, with special emphasis on how it leverages the latest System-Z technologies to enhance performance and reduce hardware and software costs. Following the presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A period, so please feel free to enter your question in the question panel on your screen anytime during the presentation. Now, without further ado, thanks again for joining us today, and Ed, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tammy, and thanks to everyone for attending today's webinar. I actually did my first IBM System Magazine webinar last year, and the feedback was so positive that they signed me up to do another one. And I just noticed, looking at the attendee list, that it looks like there's almost twice as many people as last time. So that's highly appreciated, and I hope you find this interesting over the next hour. What I'd like to do is start off with a little bit of background for people that don't know Phoenix Software. Our company's actually been in business since 1978, developing and supporting mainframe software for the three main platforms that you find on traditionally find on mainframes: ZOS, ZVSC, and ZVM. Of course, those are the current names. We're a relatively small, I like to say nimble company. We have 3 locations with developers in LA, Tulsa, and Raleigh. And our customers tell us that we're very responsive to their needs, and that's their feedback, and we appreciate that. We are a privately held company. We don't have shareholders. We have a group of developers that are USA residents, living and working here, all seasoned professionals. No part of our operation is outsourced. We definitely stay in touch with our code, and all of our developers are familiar with all areas of our code, and we stay on top of that so that we can, there's no areas there that we're afraid to look at. Our customer base are Fortune 500 corporations, also small businesses, and everyone in between. So we have definitely a broad appeal there. And, of course, I just have to put this in for the lawyers like to make sure that I let people know that we implement best practice security policies to ensure that our customer data and information are protected. Now, one of the things that we do here is we focus on leveraging the latest hardware and software technology all the time. And the question is why? Well, number one, we care about performance. The latest technology is usually better performing. And that's true. You look at the new instructions. You know, it's not just single CP instructions speed that's increasing, but there's also all sorts of things that are going on the platform, and if you're using the latest technology, generally that's a better performing option. Also, we care about trying to reduce costs, and that better performing option is also usually the cheaper option, and so leveraging the latest technology usually helps reduce costs. A good example of that is zip enablement, and I'll talk about that a little later, but I think it's pretty obvious to most people why that's a cost reduction measure. And lastly, we care deeply about this platform, ZOS in particular, and if we leverage the latest technology, it helps our platform compete. And this is the problem. You have some shops out there, people that are not leveraging the latest technologies, and those are the ones that are at greatest risk for having the rug pulled out from under them and having somebody convert them over to some competing platform. So the more that our customers and our platform as a whole take advantage of the latest technologies, the more resilient we are and the better we compete against those alternatives. And of course, for us, technology is just plain cool. We are sort of geeks at heart, I guess, and we just love playing with all the cool hardware and software stuff that comes out. So it's just a lot of fun for us. Support, top rated, 5 out of 5. I say that because there are some of our customers that are required to rate their vendors, especially large government, and we are always getting 5 out of 5. So, they tell us that we're among the best support organizations they've got as far as comparing us against whoever else it is they're comparing us against. So we feel very proud about that. We are putting out annual releases for all of our software products all the time, and there's significant new function in each release. So people are definitely getting their maintenance dollars worth. And we are making sure that we tolerate changes in new operating system releases long before GA. So we're ready for IBM's ZOS Early Support Program, and many of our customers are in those programs, and they depend on us to be there at that early time. Okay, so what do we mean by more with less for less, the name of this presentation? Well, more basically is talking about better functionality, or having more of what it is. So we're trying to make sure there's no trade-off between performance and functionality. And the with less basically is talking about performance. So we use far fewer machine resources than anything that's SSI 80 based, like SDSF, but it's not the only one. There are many, many similar kinds of alternative products. And if you just look here, we've done some of our own benchmarks. Admittedly, these are internal benchmarks, so your mileage may vary. But if you look, you can see that JES-2 users can experience between 3.5x and 12.5x times better performance, right? Not 3.5 to 12.5%, but actually 3.5 to 12.5x. So those are huge numbers. JES-3 customers can experience, in this particular benchmark, 5.4x. So these are big numbers, and that doesn't even include zip offload, right? That's just an apples-to-apples TCB mode only type of comparison, and we are able to offload generally 94% of that. It depends on the function that's running underneath, but on average, we see it at 94%. And as I say, these are based on internal benchmarks conducted here, so it could vary in the real world, but nevertheless, it's a very good story. And with less or for less basically means that EJES costs less to acquire and operate. And we have put a lot of downward pressure on this entire marketplace, downward price pressure. So even if you're not an EJES customer today, you could probably thank us for lowered prices for whatever it is that you're using. And hopefully that explains, what we mean by more with less for less. So the technology, that's one of our big focus areas, and this is our technology timeline for EJES. And you can see that we've leveraged a lot of cool technologies over the last decade. All the way back to, we were one of the very, very first users of 64-bit virtual storage back in the third quarter of 2002, and we put out a product there. And we've just continued to do major things, coupling facility structures, large DASD, relative and immediate instructions. Third quarter of 2007, we did our zip redirection and have worked with EAV. I understand there's still a lot of products out there that don't support EAVs. Our DASD channel programs are ZHPF capable. In fact, at one time we were one of only 2 vendors in the world that knew how to do ZHPF, and I actually gave a presentation at SHARE on how to do that with co-presented that presentation. And just on and on and on. You can see all these various things that we have done over the years. And our most recent release, we had an EJES Web Technology Preview, InfoCenter integration, CA Core Software Manager, batch email delivery, and I'll talk about those. And what we're working on right now is parallel processing, A-Mode 64, some more EJES Web, and a lot of other things. All right, let me see if I can put this pointer away and continue this. Okay. So as far as another one of our focus areas is the user experience, and this is a problem with mature products. What you find is that as products mature, you start to get sort of quirky things that happen to them, and it's very hard. You have to have a lot of focus to make sure that these products don't start to get unwieldy and start to have different things happen. So as you're adding functionality, you can see our first bullet here is robust functionality. It's possible to try to have that stuff go in and not have it really, really match with everything else. And we try to make sure that doesn't happen. We also want to make sure that the functionality we have is unparalleled. And we hear that from customers, especially those that have recently transitioned from other products. So we know we're on the right track. I was talking a little bit about this interface consistency issue. As products mature over time, you end up with quirks and special cases and, tribal knowledge that has to be passed on. So our focus in that case is to try to make sure that new users to the platform, right, young people coming in, or just, you don't have to be young, but just new people to the platform, see something that does not have a lot of quirks or special cases or rely upon tribal knowledge or anything like that. So interface consistency is key. Non-textual heuristics. This thing about 3270s being called green screens, it's kind of funny, but actually I'm predicting that for at least the next 5 to 10 years, people are going to be using ISPF. I think maybe even longer. And these emulated 3270 interfaces are not just green screens. There's custom geometries, extended highlighting, extended color. There's graphical drawing characters. There's program symbols, vector graphics. There's all kinds of stuff there that you can use. And what we do is we leverage those advanced 3270 features wherever we can to make sure that what you're seeing makes sense and it's not just text that you have to read. And lastly, here, the principle of least astonishment. It's one of my favorite principles. I remember it from the 1980s. Basically, it's easy to recognize violations. A product that inconsistently handles a function key, for example, on different panels, or redefines popular command with different syntax or purpose, that violates that principle. So we try to ensure that we strictly adhere to that and don't introduce things that can be kind of quirky and that kind of thing. Anyway, and for us, it's just a matter of pride, right? Our user experience, we want it to be the best you can possibly get. We're deeply involved in this community. As I said, I'm the co-manager of the Share MVS program, and our customers are our friends, and if we did anything less than excellent, it would be embarrassing. So I think like a lot of other folks, we are positioning for the future. We're interested in ZOS interface modernization, and people talk about the skills shortage and things like that, and I do see new faces. I saw some new faces at Share, people in their 20s. That's all a good sign, but there's still a lot of older folks. And one of the big focuses to try to be more appealing to, like the younger generation is to try to do ZOS interface modernization. You see IBM doing this. You see other vendors doing it. For us, we embraced the CA Core Software Manager for installation, and that's been very, very well received. And it's a really good product. I'm not shilling for somebody else here, but I'm just saying that we play with it ourselves and really get a lot of benefit out of it. We also have looked at IBM's software configuration function and ran into a little bit of a problem there that hopefully will be addressed shortly. And once that gets taken care of, then we'll probably try to focus on that area as well. And then as far as end users go, we have our EJES Web Technology Preview. It's a browser-based interface to EJES. It's implemented in Java. Our intent there is to create a de facto interface to EJES for users who aren't comfortable with traditional 3270 interfaces. We're not getting rid of 3270 at all, but we recognize the fact that there are folks out there that aren't comfortable with 3270, and we want to have an alternative for them. And also, the cloudy, web services REST API that backs the technology provides a great framework for Eclipse plugins, mobile apps, other web services clients, etc. Now, we've done this development in Java. And some people have said, well, Java's slow, blah blah blah. Actually, it's not slow anymore. It's really made a big, the System Z hardware has really been changed, and Java's done a lot of really good things. And it gets highly preferential treatment as far as from IBM as with the hardware and software design and customer terms and conditions. So it definitely seems to be a solid language platform choice and has good investment protection for this foreseeable future. So we're quite glad that we embarked on that particular direction for that. Now this is what we call the EJS solar system. I love this because in a competitive situation we put this up and let a customer or prospect fill in the blanks as far as where the holes exist in whatever other solution they either have or are considering. And the holes are usually really, really big. And this just shows there's really no other product out there that has as many ways to interface to it and as much support for different environments as EJS has. And you can see over here, on the left-hand side, all the stuff is listed in text, but just picture-wise, we have our own sort of standalone environment. We have multiple ways under TSO to get the stuff, a batch job with no languages, different support for C-lists. We have a Windows front end, a Windows app that actually runs on Windows, different ways to get in through the Rex language, including system Rex. So there's stuff that people write that's callable right from the operator console. We talked a little bit about the EJS Web Technology Preview, and that effort, that's right down here. As far as our Java API, we have APIs for other interfaces, and then CICS over here, and we do have customers using all of those. So, it's the most robust that anyone has for this kind of product in this kind of space. Let's see if I can figure out how to forward with this. And then this is what we call the Galaxy, right? It's the next thing up from the solar system. And the point here is really just to illustrate that, we're using technologies like XCF for message transport. We do actually do coupling facility work. And, these are not walks in the park, but our folks are very, very skilled technologists, and we know how to do these things and make them all work just the way you'd expect them to do. All right. So zip redirection, probably everybody knows why zip is a good thing, but I got to talk about it anyway. So it lowers software bills, right? Because the capacity upon which the software running in the LPAR is based upon the CPs and not any specialty engines. So zaps and zips do not count. Now we know that zaps are going away. Zips currently are all that really matters since there is a zap on zip feature. But EJS will run on a zip. And if you move work to zip, you're also improving the performance of your workload, believe it or not. And it's in a large shop, it might just be because there's less contention for the zip, maybe less processor delay. But in a smaller environment, what you see is that the zip itself actually runs a lot faster than the CPs. That's certainly true in our environment. It's true in a lot of environments that our customers run as well, the smaller customers. So putting something on a zip will really just give you more horsepower than leaving it on the CP. And, of course, anything you move to the zip makes more room on the CP for all the other work. So it really makes everything run faster, makes the whole system run faster. So here's like a little timeline I made here, and you just imagine an ISPF user, and that person presses enter, and then there's a short bit of execution that happens on a CP because ISPF is there reading the screen and things like that, and then ultimately passes control to EJS, and that finds its way down to the EJS kernel, and at that point things switch over to the zip. And at that point, EJS just stays on the zip, right? We're accessing other address spaces if needed, system services if needed, and so forth. We might be doing I/O to spool, and people have heard, oh, you can't do I/O from zips. Well, that's not true. It is true if you do SVC-based I/O, but if you have a proprietary Start I/O driver like we do, not true. You can just do all your work right here from the zip, and then when it's all over, it passes control back over here to the CP, and then returns back into ISPF and so forth, and then the screens are written, and then your transaction ends. So basically, when we do that over and over and over again in a loop, and measure it in RMS, we come up with a 94% offload. Okay, another area that's a big win for us is in the client-server request-response model. And what you're seeing here is the traditional client-server request-response model, where every request has its own sort of remote piece on your remote server somewhere. So request 1 is being serviced by server piece 1, whatever that is, a TCB or SRB, or just, you know, it could just be sharing TCBs. It really doesn't matter. But the point is, every request over here is an independent request that ends up flowing over to the remote side. And what you can end up with, if you have enough users, is first of all, you have a lot of duplicate effort, and you have a lot of data movement. And in periods of peak demand, you can see elongated response times, high CPU, resource pool exhaustion, contention, things like that, right? So this is where we have a big benefit in terms of what we're doing, because we understand our data. And so because of that, our servers, we have a local and a remote piece. And we have this notion of result sets. So the users come along and want to try to get information out of a result set, and if that information's old, then there will be an exchange being sent over to the other side. That remote server will then gather whatever data is needed and put it into a result set and send that back, only the changed pages, back to the requesting side. And then that result set can be used to satisfy all the users that might be requesting that. So in fact, the more users you have, actually the more efficient the design becomes. And especially in our larger sites, we see them reporting dramatic CPU savings, no observable delay, and it's just a good way of doing things. Of course, it relies on the fact that we understand our data, and that's fine. If it was a more generic kind of a data, we wouldn't be able to have such a thing, but we do understand this data, and so we're able to pull this off. See if I can forward this. Okay, so last time I did some highlights of our tabular displays, and I actually did demos on this. This time I'm not going to do that because I'm saving the demos for some of the highlights from our press release. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I will say that I'll just look at the highlights here. Powerful filtering capabilities. There's like 4 or 5 different kinds of filters, and that might sound complicated, but actually they each have their own time and need, and they're all optional. So even if you only know how to use one, you're still getting a lot done. Column arrangement functionality is more flexible than as I understand it, anybody else that's doing this. The select command we like to focus on because the ISPF behaviors, again, that's one of those principle of least astonishment issues. We don't want to redefine commands that people understand how to use. We want to extend them. Some other capabilities here, color emphasis and things like that, how you affect changes by direct overtype or pop-up. Point and shoot, there's people out there that want this, and we spent a lot of time with groups trying to make sure that we did things in a way that made it actually work and it wasn't just another development line item. So people are very happy with the point and shoot capabilities that we have out there. Intelligent column formatting is just us being very complete in how we do everything. And we want to make it so that no matter how small you shrink a column, we show the absolute most important data there. So for example, if you're shrinking down a date column, the thing you want to get rid of most likely is the year, if the year is showing. But if you're shrinking down a time, the thing you probably want to get rid of most likely there are the numbers that are in the tenths and hundredths and thousands, and stick with the hours, minutes, seconds kinds of things. So it really depends on the data that's in there, and we do that for every single column in the product, and that way, it's just another little detail. And then last but not least is pop-up help for every column. When I demo this stuff to people, a lot of times they don't realize, they think, oh, well, all these products are the same, until they see some of what we're doing, and they go, wow, that's neat stuff. And this is one of the areas right here where, if you had a job add-in, for example, and you hit help on it, it'll actually not just tell you, oh, that column is the add-in code, but it'll actually tell you, oh, that app-end code means this, and this is why this job app ended. So there's a whole lot of work that's been done there to try to make it so that users are ultra productive when they're using our product. And we have a lot of functionality in our native browsers. It doesn't mean you can't use ISPF view and edit and so forth, but we limit the need to do so because there's so much functionality in our native browsers. And but we do let you go into those other modes if you need. And for example, if you want to run an edit macro or something against data. But our native browsers have a lot of functionality that you simply cannot get in a traditional ISPF view or browse type model. So again, I'm not going to demo this right now like I did last time, but there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. The extract, that's basically copying data out of spool or out of whatever reports you have. And in our case, anything scrollable can be extracted. So that means even the tabular displays themselves. And when you go to do these extracts, if it's on disk, we'll do seamless conversion to whatever the target file attributes are, or create the file if it doesn't exist. If it's sysout that you're writing to, you can create output descriptors, and there's literally dozens of different parameters you can specify for that. And then lastly, we have the ability to write the data out to ZOS Unix. And those files there can be basically locally mounted ZFS, HFS, or it could be NFS and actually be a remote share. And there's no way anybody can tell. And that's kind of neat stuff. Application programming interfaces, APIs, basically. A lot of different products have APIs, but usually they're not as robust as what we have. This is what customers tell us. Our most popular one is the Rex API. Our Java API is written in a way that has behaviors that meet experienced Java programmers' expectations. So Java has a unique architecture, and there are different ways that we could have chosen to represent our data there, and the way that we chose is the way that seems to work best for the really experienced Java programmer. And this API is the foundation for our emerging and ongoing interface modernization. So we put a lot of emphasis on that. The design that we have is stacked. So the assembler API is used by the higher level APIs. So if we need a new function, it's not going to ever get added just to Java or just to Rex. It usually has to find its way all the way down to the lowest level just because of the way our design works. And lastly, ISF call simulation. There are customers out there that have scripts that use this interface called ISF calls. There are some shareware things out there on the CBT tape and things. And so we have a simulation for that in order for people not to have to rewrite any of those scripts, and that all seems to work. We have a thing called the Customer Application Infrastructure, which is a framework that lets customers write their own plugins to extend the capabilities. And we have done some of our own plugins here that we deliver, so you can FTP data right out of EJS. You can email it. And when that email one got recently enhanced so that you have, nice addressee lists and for the to and the CC and BCC and all that stuff. We can transmit. We can resubmit jobs without editing. There's a number of these things, and many of the customers have their own that they've written. And this one I just always is a good demo because it extracts sysmdump and then imports it into my IPCS inventory. Now, of course, that's something that only a debugger type person would want to mess around with, and so it's never really been formally added to the product, but it does make a nice demonstration. This thing, I don't think it could be understated, or it can't be overstated, excuse me, how important it is to have common sense licensing. Hopefully, all vendors these days are using subcapacity. I've heard that it's not true, that some are still not using subcapacity pricing. A lot of customers are getting larger and larger systems. They're putting all kinds of workloads on there, and it's really not fair to say, oh, well, your KEC is this size, and therefore you have to pay that. So we make sure that what we do is all based on subcapacity. Whatever I think I have an example here. Yeah, LPAR sharing CPU resources. If you defined it as a capacity of 100 MSU and a CAC capable of delivering 500, then the pricing would be identical to 100. And we use IBM's definition of capacity, so that means that we do not include ZAPs or ZIPs or any specialty engines that might come along, the Zoom. Those do not count. And this is important here, enterprise-wide MSU aggregation. Different folks will do this differently. I know that IBM, they will start their aggregation over for PSLC and VWLC at the parallel sysplex boundary. And there may be vendors that use physical site boundaries. In our case, we aggregate across the entire enterprise. And the reason why that's important is because MSUs get cheaper and cheaper the more you add, and so you don't want to have to start over again on some boundary like a parallel sysplex when you can just keep going and the entire enterprise, and that way things just get cheaper. And also, it's a lot less paperwork than having to keep track of, what parallel sysplexes, where are your CECs, what are they attached to, and things like that. Okay, this last point is kind of minor. All right, so I wanted to briefly touch on some highlights from our recent press release. This was the 12th of September, and we talked about things. Of course, they asked me, what do you want in the press release? And we had about 15 or 20 line items, and so these are the ones that I ended up putting in there. EJS mail utility, DAS, the extract catalog dataset list, filtering using system symbols, InfoCenter integration, CA Core Software Manager install, and the web technology preview. So what I wanted to do here is this is where I've decided I am going to do a little bit of demo and take the risk and talk about some of these things. So the first thing is this EJS mail utility. And what I've got, this is the most predominant use case that we've seen. It's basically a batch utility, and you could run it. And in this particular case, what I'm doing is saying, I want to put this step at the end of my job, and I want to email the output of this job as an attachment to some person. This says Joe user, but actually I'm emailing it to myself here at Jaffe@phoenixsoftware.com. I'm the from, I'm the to, I'm the CC. I could have multiple froms and tos and CCs. I could have a formal cover letter or just this little quickie note, which is actually great for cell phones and that kind of thing. And anyway, so what I'm doing here is submitting this listcat, and you can see we are a bilingual bi-Jesual shop here. We have JES 3 and JES 2 Jekyll in here. And this job, what it should do is do this listcat, and then email the contents of this to me. So you're going to get a look here real quick at some of the junk mail that I get. So bear with me for a second. Okay, there it is, output from listcat. And there it is. Let's see what that shows. Here's that little quickie note. And then as the attachment, there's the output right there. So by putting that EJS mail in at the end, I was able to do that. Okay. The next thing I wanted to show quickly was, let's see, let me do it over here on a JES 2 environment. The DAS, the extract catalog dataset list. We had one of our larger, very, very large healthcare providers ask for this, and so I wanted to make sure that they knew we cared about them, put it in the announcement. So normally this extract DASD file name would just be a file name there, and it would just do the extract, or I could write to file 2. But if I want, now with this new support, I can put a mask in there, and then basically with the catalog search interface, choose which of the ones I want to use as an output. Okay? Filtering using system symbols. I'll just back up to here real quick. Let's say something like, if I want to say, what's the current day? Weekday, dot asterisk. See, I got WED, Wednesday. Today's the Wednesday. So I got a system symbol in there. That's probably not a very good one, so I don't think I have any jobs that start with that, but I could do something like asterisk ampersand sysclone. Oops, not sysclose, sysclone. And then go, and sure enough, there's some jobs out there with that name. So, and what's neat is when it comes to these meta filters, let's see if I could do that same thing. Asterisk dot sysclone, not dot, ampersand sysclone. Got to spell it right. When I go in and look there, it's actually stored in the filter, the symbol itself. So, and these filters are shareable. You can copy it from one user to another. You can use them in batch and so forth. So it doesn't make sense to have it substituted right away. It's nice that it gets substituted dynamically at runtime. So that was another one of the things we did. This Info Center integration, let me start up the workstation connection here, ISPF. And notice when I do that, I'm still using 3270. That's a common misconception. Oh, look, somebody's doing some work. It's a common misconception that you need to use the ISPF GUI. It's not really true. You can actually use basically any, wow, this person really is doing a lot of work here. Let me, there's a display ASM. Let me double click on this IEE200i, hit F6, and what's happening now is we fired up the ZOS 2.1 Info Center. Why do we choose 2.1? Because that's the release we're running on. And then over here you can see the various hits, IEE200i, and right there is the message. So the fact that IBM did away with Book Manager for EJES customers is kind of a non-issue because you can still just point and shoot at just any messages you see in there, or provide your own text, and it'll go ahead and search that stuff. Okay, let me skip over the Core Software Manager part and just instead quickly see if I have if I can bring up. Okay, I was going to bring up the. Unfortunately, it looks like I messed up and don't have my web technology preview on here. That's too bad because I really wanted to demonstrate that quickly so that people could see that. I may still have a link to it. There it is. All right, let me just try that. I apologize for having a technical failure. That's why it's always risky. So here we go. This is sitting on the Opera log. You can see there. I can copy and paste. Well, I'm not going to paste. I'm not going to waste my time on that. But trust me, that was just copied out. There's a status. See how quickly this comes up. Then I've got a job here. What do I want to do? Okay, I want to browse it. And we actually have customers out there, even though we call this a technology preview, who are using this thing now to do their work. So they have some folks that prefer this kind of an interface, and so it's there for them, and we're improving it as we go. Let's see. I should be able to also cancel this and take it out. Yep, I did. So then when I refresh over here, that job should have just disappeared, and indeed it did. Okay, good. So I was able to demo that, and now I'm going to end this live demo part and go back to the presentation, because let me just say that the Core Software Manager part, it's a great tool, but and it does demo well, but for us on our systems a little bit slow, and it takes a while to run the PAX utility to create the blob and to uncreate it, so to unwind it. So I just thought I would just show a couple of quick slides here. And basically, this is our old install path here on the left-hand side, down here. And what we've done is introduced a question mark here that says, oh, do you want to use the CSM? And if so, we'll on the fly create input to CSM. And then you go down this install path instead. Okay? And basically, there's that choice. And then the prompts, we have fewer prompts than we had before. This basically runs here, and then you get to the point where it's saying, okay, where do you want to put the output? And then it runs the GIM zip utility right here, and boom, you're done. Then at that point, you go into Core Software Manager, define EJES 5.3 as a product. Then over here, you add the package. Then down here, you basically select install for the package, and it prompts you for some various things, prefixes and so forth. And the install's all done. And one neat thing about that is if anything goes wrong, it backs it all out. So you don't end up with a half-installed thing like you would if you were just doing it with the traditional SMP. And then if you want to do maintenance, you can add external maintenance like this. Okay, so here's a sneak peek on the next release. Pardon me. The next release, one of the things we're doing is asynchronous multi-system displays. It was true that our displays were pretty quick, but we're getting customers now that have 13, 14, 15, 17 members, and if each one, let's say 15 members, and each one took a second to respond, and you did them one at a time, then that's 15 seconds, which is just not acceptable. So what we're doing here is launching all the remote queries simultaneously, and then doing the local data collection on the current system, and this is all overlapping now. So we're not reducing CPU time. That's the difference between what we've normally done as far as our focus. In this case, we're just reducing clock time. And then we get the remote data back, and then it falls into the main part, the part that it would have done before anyway. And by the way, I put the sort on here to give me a chance to mention that our sort, we're using the CFC and UPT instructions on the hardware. So our sort practically runs for free. Another big change here that we're doing in the next release, we've converted EJES over to 64-bit addressing mode. And I would say it may be the only HL-ASM authored ZOS software product that can make this claim. At the very least, it's among a very select few. And with this conversion, then areas of virtual storage constraint, known constraint, are being moved above the 2 gig bar, and the code is already ready to do it. And it's easy to move them once the code is 64-bit. Another thing we're doing is parallelism. If you've been to any IBM presentations at Share and elsewhere, you see them talking about how single-core speeds are no longer increasing, or they won't be increasing at the same rate they've done historically. And so in order to try to increase parallelism for our products, and EJES in particular, we've implemented some new highly parallel algorithms. So again, we're not reducing the CPU time. What we're doing is spreading it out over multiple engines so that we're reducing clock time. And in our particular test that we did here with expensive task X, I'll just call it, we split the work across 3 SRBs, and we saw a 64% reduction in clock time. So it's really been very successful. And so, I put this in here, Moore's Law be damned. I don't know if that's quite true, but we're really, really very happy with that. And lastly, on the next release, the EJES Web Performance, we have modified the performance characteristics, the way that we do some things in EJES Web, so that now, no matter how big your displays are, if you are accustomed to the ISPF interface, you should get very similar response times. Last but not least, I just want to clarify our business model with EJES. I went through this whole presentation at the UK GSC last November, and when I got to the very end, I was asked a question which I at first thought were a couple of questions. I thought they were pricing questions, but actually what he was asking is, what's our business model? And I thought I had sort of covered that in the first 10 or 15 minutes of the presentation. So I just want to clarify again. The cover sheet articulates the business model. It's more functionality, using fewer resources, and providing bottom line hard dollar cost savings. Okay? And the idea here is to remove the traditional trade-offs. So ordinarily, you're making a tough choice. You're saying, okay, is the superior functionality and performance worth the additional costs? Can we get by with what we have? And we're trying to get a different question asked, which is like, why pay higher costs for lesser functionality and performance? So the idea is for EJES to be like a no-brainer software purchase decision. So, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. How on earth can that be done? Well, a company like ours, our license costs are much closer to the real cost of doing business. And if this might resemble some software companies and maybe not others, but some of them have, expenses that have nothing to do with developing software. Pension plans, a lot of executives, highly compensated salespeople driving luxury cars to play golf with your CIO. I mean, these are kind of, stereotypical kind of joking things here. But honestly, there's a lot of truth to this. And, we don't have stockholders taking cash out of our company every quarter either. And so, these kinds of things do affect the bottom line. And so we are able to, provide the product at a much lesser cost than some of our competitors. And our broad business objectives, I just wanted to make that point. We want to develop world-class software that leverages the latest System Z tech. That's what we're really interested in as the bit twiddlers we are. We want to help the platform compete against the alternatives, and we want to help our customers stay competitive in their respective industries. And these three objectives are all very intertwined. The better the customers do, the better our platform does, and the better the platform does and our customers do, then the more opportunity we have to develop that world-class software. So I've come now to the question and answer period. Hopefully I didn't go too fast, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Great, thank you. So we'll just take a few minutes now to answer some questions. Again, if you have a question, you can use the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen to send it in. Okay, first question. I do have a couple of clarifying questions. One was, to use CSM, do you have to have the license, a software license for CSM?
Okay, so as I understand it, Chorus Software Manager it has the ability, first of all, that's a CA product, so I can't really speak for CA, so don't quote me on this. But as I understand it, it is a free add-on for any CA product that you have. And in our case, we were able to license it without any other CA product. So I'm assuming that that is also an alternative for customers in the field, but I can't say for sure. But I do know that when you get it, however you get it, it does not cost anything. It is a free license. That part I am sure of.
Sure. So the second part, there's another part of the question that also relates to CA, which is can you install EJES via CA Chorus? Because the questioner doesn't know if he's aware of that.
So I do not know the subtle distinction between CA Chorus and CA Chorus Software Manager. I believe Chorus is a brand, and CSM. So, but again, I'm speaking a little out of my depth here. CSM used to be MSM, which was Mainframe Software Manager, I believe, and then they renamed it when they came up with the Chorus brand to Chorus Software Manager, and it's currently on I think they're beta testing the 6.0 release. So I think Chorus is a brand and CSM is a product, and you definitely need CSM in order to install EJES if you want to do it with that GUI install.
Great. So what's the release date for the web support?
Okay, that's a good question. So the Web Technology Preview was released last September, and we do annual releases. So every year at the last week of September, or actually the second to last week of September is our GA. So often that's 1 week. Every other year that's 1 week before ZOS, and on the years that ZOS is not released, there's no ZOS release, but we stick to that very same timetable. So the final EJES Web, the one that we will not be calling a technology preview, will be available in that time frame, the second week of September.
All right. Can I use my SDSF Rex execs if I switch to EJES?
Okay, that's another good question. Let me just see if I can find, there's a way on here to go to specific screens. Honestly, I'm not sure. I did mention that we had ISF call support, and that is what that is. So, I know. Let me just get down to that. All right, well, I'm not able to do that too easily on here. I apologize. I'm not an expert at navigating WebEx. But that ISF call support that I talked about, that is SDSF Rex execs. The function that you call to start up those execs and make that Rex API available is called ISF calls, and so we have that capability in EJES, and you can basically run them unchanged. I mean, I've not heard of customers having problems running them unchanged. I know people are actually doing it. So.
All right. How hard is it for users to transition from SDSF to EJES? Is it hard to learn?
Let me just start by saying I did finally pull up something that showed ISF calls here, down here. So this was one of the little globes I have on here. How hard is it to convert? I don't. It's a question you're asking me. Of course, what am I going to say? It's the easiest thing in the world. There's a lot of similarities, and folks have not had problems doing that. We have had to answer some questions. We did put together a little document for some people to have like the from and to, the old way, the new way kind of thing as cheat sheets for some of the customers. But we've not heard any complaints or anything like that, honestly, about that transition. So I suspect it's probably not a big problem.
All right. So is there anything special that must be installed to use EJES Mail?
No, there's nothing at all. It's just, okay, well, first of all, your mainframe needs to be capable of connecting to the outside world. And once you can do that, then, in other words, through the Internet, then you don't have to install anything special. Now, the example I used showed NJE. That would have required at least SMTP to be configured on your system. But we have actually 3 different modes. We have the SMTP mode, or what we call NJE. We also have direct sockets mode, and then we also have XMed IP, which is a product written by a friend of mine, Lionel Dyke, and that's downloadable off of his site. Anyway, if you use the direct sockets approach, then you don't need anything on your system. As long as you have Internet connectivity, you can, it's a direct socket. It's slower than the other 2 options because it's implemented in Rex, but it does absolutely work without any configuration at all. So the answer is no, you don't need anything.
All right. Does EJES have a security interface to limit commands authority like SDSF, ISF parms? Okay,
so yes, there's 2 different security models. There's the SAS-based security, and then there's the internal security, which is parameters-driven. And both of those 2 can be used together or independently. And absolutely, you can limit what displays people can go to. You can limit. I mean, you can do it even down to the point where if somebody's going to overtype a column, you can even say, in a parameterized way, if the column contains these values, then I want to prohibit it being changed. And if it contains other values, then I want to allow it to be changed. So, for example, and then to what it's changing to, you can limit. So, for example, you could allow your users to change their own job priorities, but maybe you force them to submit all their job priorities as 1, and you could allow them to boost them up to, say, 3, but not any higher than 3. And then system administrators would be able to, of course, set the priorities to 4 through 15. So, I mean, it's very, very exhaustive, and I didn't want to really talk about that in this, but absolutely, those functions are there, and it's very similar to what other products are doing, and we even offer conversions assistance for free to help convert, security specifications from other products.
Great. So looking at the clock, I think we have time to squeeze in one last question, and that is, what options do you have for users who prefer a GUI?
Okay, so luckily I happen to be right on this screen here. So right here is the Windows interface, and unfortunately I didn't have a screenshot of that, but basically that's a native Windows function, and it goes through this EJWS MVS server here. And so that's one option that's been in use for many, many years. And then I did talk a little bit about, and even demoed briefly, our EJES Web option right here. And at the moment, it's a technology preview, but I do say that there are customers already using that. And then the final one will be this September. And so those will be the 2 GUI-type options for folks that can't use 3270.
Okay, if we didn't get to your question, we will get back to you via email. But thank you, Ed, for sharing your expertise with us today. Just a quick note that we will be sending out a link early next week to a recording of today's presentation to everyone who's on the call, as well as to anyone who registered for the event but for whatever reason couldn't make it. So that concludes our webinar. I want to thank everyone for attending and have a great day.